How's everyone doing tonight? We doing good? Let's go. Good to see you guys. Good to see you guys. Hey, if we haven't met yet, my name is Tony. I'm the youth pastor here. We got a special night tonight. I'm not going to preach at y'all, so we're going to just have a good discussion. You guys ready to have a good night? I'm pumped. Hey, just a couple ground rules. Thanks so much for keeping your masks on. We appreciate it. We love you. But hey, if you brought your Bibles, go ahead, open up. We're in Mark chapter 12. Mark chapter 12. And I'm going to give you guys some context. Here's what's happening. Jesus is speaking to an audience, and it's a very tense audience. He has these religious leaders who are trying to test him and on everything he knows, and they're trying to prove, can we get Jesus to say the wrong thing? Because if we get him to say the wrong thing, we've won. And if we win, we kill him, we put him in jail. That's how this thing works. So they're asking him these very poignant questions. It's very tense. And they realize that every time they asked him a question, Jesus kept answering with a good answer. They didn't know what else to ask him. So they thought, we're going to ask him this one last question. If we get him with this question, that's it. It's game over. Mark chapter 12, verse 30 with 31. If you're there, somebody say amen. Amen. They say this. Actually, I'll go to verse 28. One of the teachers of the religious law was standing there listening to the debate. He realized that Jesus answered well, so he asked, of all the commandments, which is most important? Jesus, what is the most important thing I should do? He says this. Jesus responds, the most important commandment is this. Listen, the Lord our God is the one and only Lord. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. The second, everyone say second. The second is equally important. Love your neighbor. Everyone say neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. No other commandment is greater than these. Jesus says, love God and love your neighbor. There is no greater commandment than this. And tonight, what we wanted to do is something I feel like maybe some people have been shying away from. Tonight, we wanted to have an honest, real conversation with two people from two different backgrounds, two walks of life, to have an honest conversation about things happening in our nation right now. Because if you guys haven't noticed yet, maybe you've been under a rock for the last, however many years, we are suffering a humanitarian crisis where there are people who live in our country who are discriminated against, who don't feel they have equal opportunity, who some in our country are judged immediately based off the uniform they wear or the color of their skin. And tonight I thought, how amazing would it be for us to come at this not from a political approach, not from the left or the right, not for who we're voting for. No. What does the Bible have to say about loving our neighbor? And I want to just dive in. Tonight, you might have came in here with a bias already. My ask of you and of those you watching, let us tonight have open hearts. Let us tonight to seek to understand rather than to just be understood. Let's seek to hear someone else's opinion. And let's seek to be people who reconcile rather than divide. We will be known as people who bring people together rather than push them away. Amen? So I invited some of my friends. They're going to join us tonight. You guys got to give them a huge shout out. Let's invite up Mark Postma, Mike Simmons. Give them a huge round of applause, everybody. Give it up for them. Let's go. Looking dapper. You guys look great. Oh. Hey, before we start, both of you have had kids or have kids that are in our youth ministry. Ronan's coming back. We're speaking that in Jesus' name. He's coming back. So would love maybe for each of you to just tell us a little bit about yourselves, what you do, and how you came to Jesus. You're good. Just a little bit about you, what you do, your family, and how you came to Jesus. Yeah.
So, my name's Mark Postma. Husband to Alicia for the last 12 years. I have Ronan, who sadly is in Arizona. Everybody say, "Aw." Thank you.
All the girls went, oh. No, sorry.
Oh, hey, no, too much.
Okay,
too much.
sorry.
Okay. I have a daughter, Avens, 5th grade. Reese is in 3rd grade, and Kason is in 1st grade. I work as a police officer down at the University of Washington. Yes, they have their own police department. It's weird because it's right in the middle of Seattle, but we have our own. I'm there 4 days a week, 40 hours. It's my story about coming to Jesus. I grew up in Linden, up at the border, big Dutch Christian town. So went to Linden Christian, K through 12. So my story, my faith was kind of pushed on me all growing up. Chapels were mandatory, 2 days a week. Church Sundays, sometimes twice, youth group. So it wasn't until I moved away, went to college in Michigan, to a small college out there. So first time I kind of had to experience Jesus on my own. Made some mistakes, made some poor choices, but I always had my faith to lean back on. Had great parents who I could always call up, tell them I messed up, told me that they forgave me, and I moved on. Graduated college, moved back, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Actually became a police officer in 2006 when I was 23. Hated it. I worked out in Oak Harbor up on Whidbey Island. Absolutely hated it. I was isolated on my own. Felt like I had nobody to talk to about what's going on. So I quit 11 months into it. Just trying to figure out where to go next. So a few weeks after I quit, so it was December, it's a nice December day, went for a hike. So I'm just walking around in the woods trying to figure out what to do with my life. So I come up over this ridge, the sun's kind of going down over the water, and there's this tree lit up by the sun, and I heard God's voice say, just be still and know that I'm God. And I was in a tough place, spiritually, emotionally, all that, because I thought I had the career I wanted. Didn't work out, quit. So I was trying to figure out what to do next. But like I said, God spoke to me. So of course, being the young, dumb 23-year-old I didn't listen. Moved on, took a job on the East Coast. It's like a seasonal thing with an organization I'd worked with in college. Still trying to figure out what to do. Made some more mistakes, made some bad choices, ended up moving back home with my parents. That's a great thing to do when you're 24, 25 years old. But it all worked out. Fast forward a few years, some odd jobs now and then. Met my wife. We found what was known as Canyon Creek. Been coming here now for the last, 11 or 12 years, something like that. It's been great. Obviously had a bunch of babies in there too. Life's good. A few different job opportunities led me to where I'm at today. But looking back now, I can see God's hand in all of it. And just fortunate and I feel very blessed to be where we're at today. That was really long. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
That. Okay.
You have the mic tonight. You guys good? Yeah. They're here. They're cool. Thanks, Mark. It's awesome.
I was going to have Mark keep going. Take your time. Mike Simmons, man of faith, father of 2 girls. Some of you may know my youngest daughter, Rachel, who's a member here and has been a member here for a little while here. And let's see here. All of 57 years old, and grew up in Illinois till I was 15. Both my parents were deceased. moved to LA and happened to move with my aunt and uncle. And my uncle, who is still my best friend to this day, he is a 92-year-old retired Episcopal priest. So I'll be going to visit him. He now lives in Augusta, Georgia, but he and I are best friends and the ultimate rock, if you will. But as far as my faith, I can remember back as far as elementary school in Springfield, Illinois, and the Sunday school teacher's name was Miss Jackson. And she never would say goodbye. She'd say, always say so long, because she was expecting to see you again the next time. And so, but, grew up in the Baptist church in Springfield, Illinois, and then, after my mother's death, moved to LA with my aunt and uncle. And needless to say, became the Episcopal church. My uncle was in the Episcopal church, and he and I are a lot alike, but I have nothing to do with the priesthood. So we'll be clear on that part. Went on to school, graduated from USC, and moved up here in '97 with Lauren and Rachel and their mother, and worked for Boeing for 21 years. Kind of retired from Boeing last January. I've attended church here a few times with Rachel. I want to be supportive of her, because often we'll refer to Lauren and Rachel as my pride and joys. Anyone that knows me will tell you that. And so left Boeing in January, took a little time off, and now I work for Seattle Public Schools. And so that's what I do now. And I guess my side gig is the president of the Mukilteo School Board.
Just a side gig, just the president of Mukilteo.
Needless to say, there's the big question of when will we go back to school? And I don't have the answer to that right now. But one thing I can assure you is that when we do that, it will be safe for everyone. That is the most important thing. And I think that goes for every school district that's represented here. So, but at the end of the day, every day I wake up, I try to find my joy every day. I mean, that is the end all to all ends. And as I've shared with Mark and Tony, at the end of the day, I tell folks, whatever your issue is, whatever your challenge is, whatever your gap is, lean on your faith. Whatever denomination it is, lean on your faith. So, that being said, turn
awesome.
it back over to Tony.
Well, hey, we have some questions I'd love to ask you guys. Either of you can answer first. These are questions that were submitted. And then, hey, for you guys tonight out there, and we have some people watching, is what we're gonna do is we have a slide up on the screen. Ryan, can you throw it up on the screen? If you have any questions tonight about anything that you're hearing up here, anything you came in wondering about, you could actually text in your questions to that number. It's an anonymous number, so we don't know who would be texting us. But if you have a question, and hopefully at the end of our discussion, we'll have some time for Q&A, we'll be able to answer some of your questions. So can we just dive in? You guys, let's go for it. Being a police officer, being an African American, what is it like being you in the world right now, amongst just all the turmoil around us? What is it like being you right now?
So since he went first, I'll go first this time.
There you go.
At the end of the day, African American or black, I mean, everyone's different in how they address it, but it's a challenge, but at the same token, I have to own that challenge. The reality is, let me just give you an example that I've shared with a number of people. If the three of us are driving down the freeway and we're all going 75 miles an hour, and the police officer is a quarter mile back and the lights go on, the flashing lights go on, and we all have heart monitors on, chances are my heart is going to race a little bit faster than his heart. Therein lies the reality that the world we live in, right? And that's been that reality before George Floyd. And I understand that, I recognize that. I don't necessarily like it, but that is the reality. And so how I approach things is from my perspective at 57. I live in Mukilteo. Have I experienced racism in Mukilteo? Subtleness, if you will. But at the same time,
we have some bugs in the house.
At the same time, I walk a lot, but I don't walk at night. I walk in the morning when the sun comes up. Not that I'm afraid, but I'm mindful of my surroundings at all times. And I'd be negligent not to be mindful of that. And so it's a way of life as a black person. I guess what I would say is at some point it will change, probably not within my lifetime. What I would say is ask folks to take a step back, and you can't walk a day in my shoes. I can simply share my perspective, is what I would say. So,
That's great. Mark, what's it like to be you in the world right now?
Most days are good. Unlike Mike, when I'm done with my shift, I take my uniform off, I hang out my vest, I hang out my belt, I put on these clothes, and I drive home. But for the 10 hours that I'm at work, lately, I'm called every name in the book. I'm told that I should quit my job. I'm called racist just from the uniform that I'm wearing. And going into it, you think, it's not you, Mark. They don't know you personally. They're just mad because you're wearing the uniform and you have the badge, which could be true. But at the end of the day, over the period of time, you kind of start to question whether what you're doing is still right. I didn't grow up to be a quitter. I think there's a lot of good that can come out of law enforcement. Mike's talking about hoping for change to come. And I think being a police officer, but also being a man of faith, hopefully I can help project and push forward to promote change.
That's awesome.
But like I said, at the end of the day, I take off the uniform and I leave work at work. I come home, sometimes my kids are in bed, sometimes they're not, they're up watching Netflix way too late. But, I'm able to come home and, give them a hug. My wife asked me, how the day went. I share most of the details with her. Some things I leave out. But it's definitely a different time. I'll share one story that just happened on Monday. So it's kind of weird down in the U District. If you call 911, sometimes it goes to Seattle, sometimes it comes to university dispatchers. So we got a call transferred from Seattle about a male that was at the light rail station who said he was going to commit suicide by jumping in front of the train. So he described himself, he didn't give a clothing description, he just said that, he's a black male standing by stair number 7. So we show up, we go down to the bottom, we go up and contact him, he's on the phone, you start talking to him, are you, so-and-so? And he's like, nope, it's not me. And he's the only guy standing by by stair 7. Did you call 911? Nope, wasn't me. And he's on the phone still. So this kid, he's a kid, he comes up and he's like, that man didn't do anything wrong. Why are you talking to him? Leave him alone. He didn't do anything. And we're like, sir, he's the one that called 911. He told us he was suicidal and was going to jump in front of the train. The only reason you think he's in trouble is because of the color of his skin. You don't know that he called 911 saying he was going to commit suicide. So the kid made some other comments about, will he be safe unless you kill him first? So things like that do happen. Just because a white officer talking to a black man, I think it's just the climate we're in right now is that kid just assumed he was guilty of something because the cops were talking to him. He didn't know that this man had called 911 saying he wanted to commit suicide by jumping in front of the train. So he ended up not wanting our assistance. He got on the train and he said he was going to go down to the SeaTac or Angle Lake, whatever was down there, and seek resources and help down there. But it's just things like that where law enforcement's, it's different now. Like I said, you get people calling you every name in the book. You see the graffiti everywhere. I won't say the word, but it starts with an F and ends with 12, and ACAB's painted all over. So seeing that day after day can get pretty taxing on you emotionally. But like I said, at the end of the day, I can take off the uniform and I go home to my family. I get my weekends off, spend time with them, and be able to come to church and enjoy some of my hobbies. So,
Thank you for both sharing. I think, Mark, going to your story about the young man who already just assumed about you, I think what we're doing tonight, hopefully people would see this. Maybe it might offend some people that we're just simply doing this. I hope that tonight, and for people watching, that they would see that we want to seek to understand both of your walks of life first before we would assume anything over either of you. And my hope for you guys encourages, hey, never judge a book by its cover. You don't know what those what are inside written on those pages. We don't know what's happening in their lives. And you guys are both followers of Jesus, love God, and that's why we really love that about you guys. What would you each say is your response right now to the divisiveness towards people of color and to police officers? What can we do to help and learn right now with this as followers of Jesus?
I think for me, it's you need to look inside yourself. Like, what's in your heart? Where are these thoughts coming from? Why are you having these thoughts of, whether it's all cops are bad or whether you think whatever you think about black people? It's like, why and where is this coming from inside of you? I think the intro to tonight, Tony, was great, that we're called to love one another, love your neighbor. And like you just said, Tony, like you don't know where this person's coming from. Sometimes a simple hi and a smile can change their day because you don't know what they're going through.
It's really good.
It's an interesting thing. We all have our biases, right? How many people, by a show of hands, know who Michael Jackson is? All right.
Thank God.
Everybody.
Or else I would have been really sad tonight.
If not, we got to get a bunch of tacos. But anyway, and he had that one song, "Man in the Mirror," right? Man in the mirror, woman in the mirror, and assuming everybody brushes their teeth in the morning and at night, and they're standing in the mirror. At the end of the day, it begins and ends right there with your faith in that person in the mirror. So, the divisiveness and the challenges that come along with that, it's not easy by any stretch, regardless of what your background is, your skin color is, it is tough. Social media sways you one way, and something else will sway you the other. So you get swayed different places and different directions every day. But one thing you do have control over, and that is your faith and how you show up every day.
So good, yeah.
And, that's the piece that you have to own individually, regardless of your age. And to the extent in which you are easily swayed, kind of work on that. You got to work on that, because ultimately Mike Simmons is responsible for how he responds to everything. Okay. And if I can help that person who overextends or over-responds or doesn't respond fast enough or whatever, then that's kind of my job to help, whether the person looks like me or looks like Mark. Ultimately that's what we have to do. But the divisiveness is, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
I understand it,
Yeah.
but it's tough. And then I always say, what happens next? Tomorrow's a new day.
Yeah.
We'll all go home, and some of us will say, what the heck happened on the debate? Some of us will turn on the news or whatever, but still, tomorrow's Thursday, October the 8th, and I will guarantee you it will be something else. And how you approach whatever that is, start with your faith, start with that person in the mirror and say, what does it mean to me personally?
I love that.
And where do I go from there? So,
Man, both of your answers were so, Mark talk about reflecting on the heart. Mike saying, hey, you're responsible for you. There's going to be a day where we're going to stand before Jesus, and he's not going to ask about our neighbor, how we treated, what they did, but how we were in our walks. And I appreciate both your answers. Mike, you hit on something. Talked about social media. Social media, just by show of hands, who has a social media account of some sort? So, some junior hires, not yet, that's okay. Enjoy your childhood before it's corrupted. This is Generation Z. All they've known is iPads, social media. I don't know how many of you guys used to ride your bikes outside. Okay, cool. At least some of us still do that. Thank God. But Generation Z, we don't know much about this generation, but what we've learned is, man, they'll fight for a cause and they'll speak up and they'll fight for something. But sometimes they'll fight, and what we've noticed is without maybe an understanding of what they're fighting for. That if the group is fighting, we're going to fight. And I feel like with social media, it's caused so much division in that with what you repost and the graphics and the memes and all these things. What would you say to this young crowd who obviously has influence with their social media accounts? What could they do with their social media accounts to not cause any more division, or to maybe not, and I'm not saying our crowd does this because we all love Jesus and we're already beautiful, amazing people, amen? Venture Youth, yes. No one here would ever post something crazy. But for our friends that are watching, what would you say, how do we use social media right now in this season of life?
it's not going away, right? It's here to stay, number one. And it has its pluses, probably more pluses than minuses, but the minuses are the things that get magnified. But you are what you post. You are representative of what you post, and once you say post it, you can't take it back. And so I would just say be mindful of what that is, and assume that your parents or your younger brother and sister are going to read that 10 years from now. What are they going to think about you? Because your younger brother and sister are always looking up to you, whether you say you're their role model or not. That's going to happen. The second piece of that is, what's your intent? You know, whether you intended it to or not, can what you post hurt somebody? You know, and that makes you really step back. And we all do it in our professional lives. We write a memo because we're all ticked off. And oftentimes you get coached. Sleep on it first before you send it. And oftentimes you'll come back in a different frame of mind, trust me. But I think the social media thing, and as you grow up and as you start applying for jobs, I will tell you, employers look. And oftentimes you are, before you even get to the interview, employers will look and you will get judged whether you meant it or not. What you posted is representative. Your interview starts before you even get there. So it's there's just some things to be careful of. But I think the most important thing, is it God-like, so to speak? And if it's going to cause any harm to anyone, really think about it, because it is representative of you, whether you meant it or not. And the only other thing I'll say, and then I'll shut up, is, there's social media, but absolutely there's no substitute for face-to-face. I mean, we could all be at home tonight doing Zoom and be multitasking, right? But there's no substitute for this. I mean, there is no substitute for eyeballing each other, period.
Write that down.
That will never, ever be a substitute for that. So
That's so good, man. Mark?
I think Mike took all the good answers for that one. No, but just to kind of piggyback on everything he said was, before you post anything, if there's an article attached or some kind of backstory. Do your research too. Because like Mike said, it's gonna live on for eternity. You know, unless it's Snapchat, then it's gone, I guess. But yeah, I found out through just shopping Ronin. So, you know, like I said, it's gonna be there. So if it's something that you're gonna have to look back on and you're gonna have some regrets, it's still gonna be there. Just do your research, and if does it really need to be said now? Like Mike said, can you sleep on it? Can it wait? Can I talk to a group of friends? Can I ask someone that's maybe not like me, maybe someone that's outside of my circle, you know, what they think, how they feel? Now I got the bug. But yeah, because it's going to be there. You know, there might be, you know, a generation, you know, a few months from now, they're going to look back and be like, oh, you know, I said that, you know, that's not what I meant. But yeah, it's going to be there. So just try, if you can, try and do some research. But Mike took all the good answers.
No, that was amazing.
Think of it as a tattoo. Kind of hard to get rid of a tattoo, right? In the wrong place.
Uprising tattoo, unfortunately. If you didn't know, our youth ministry used to be called Uprising. I got a tattoo for it because you guys couldn't fundraise, and I said, well, if they fundraise $5,000, I'll get a tattoo. And then next week we fundraised $5,000. But we haven't tithed since, so I don't know what's going on. So let me ask you guys this. Those are great, both great answers. The phrase Black Lives Matter. Now, this phrase has been a while and when I say Black Lives Matter, I am referring to the phrase, not the organization. I am referring to the phrase Black Lives Matter. Now, even saying that, it causes tension sometimes. This question's for the both of you. Mike, do you feel supported if I say Black Lives Matter? And Mark, do you feel that when someone says Black Lives Matter, does it make you feel that now they have to be against police officers? Like it's an either or. You're either Black Lives Matter and nothing else, or you're Black Lives Matter because we see someone's hurting, but that does not mean I hate police officers. How does that statement, I guess that's my question. Mike, do you feel supported? And Mark, does it make you feel maybe even pushed away, or what happens?
I think for me, I would agree. Black lives do matter. I think being in law enforcement, we take an oath to serve everyone. Are there bad cops out there? Yes. Do those bad cops make good cops angry, upset? Absolutely. You know, we're called to uphold the Constitution, not just the United States, Washington, you know, wherever department you're working in. What I've found, just being out at work, riding around, driving around, whatever it is people will drive by or people will run by, walk by, and scream that at us. You know, Black Lives Matter, and be like, I agree with you. Nobody's disagreeing with you, but it's usually followed by some of those phrases I said before, that you're a blanking, you know, racist pig, you know, all that stuff. So what I've found is that phrase, Black Lives Matter, is yelled at me, followed by some other derogatory terms about my profession. But I agree, Black Lives Matter. You know, we said it before, Jesus calls us to love everybody. You know, just because being in law enforcement doesn't mean that certain groups are inferior to others. Like that's not how it works. You know, if you call 911, we're going to show up, whether you're black, you know, yellow, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. We're going to come. We're going to help. Like I said, usually what I've found in the last few months is that the phrase Black Lives Matter is usually attached to, someone telling me to quit my job or, go do something else. But no, I support it. I don't feel by that phrase being said that it, should cause any kind of division.
Sure.
But like I said, when it's been yelled at me, it's usually comes with
Sure.
some other terms, and but I agree, they
Yeah.
do.
It's interesting. It's not the first time I've been asked that question. I have a wristband on that was given to me by somebody that looks like Mark. It says Black Lives Matter,
Wow.
right? Somebody at work.
Wow.
But it's certainly a phrase that matters. There is a heightened sensitivity to it, as it should be, for obvious reasons, for some of the things that have been happening. Not just lately, we just happen to have a camera on every corner that we've seen the things that have happened lately. And so the intent there is to have an heightened sensitivity around Black Lives Matter. It does not lessen your life or your life, but the heightened sensitivity of the treatment
Yeah.
and some of the resulting things that have happened, it's bringing it more to the forefront. And so, I embrace it. I'm not sure about the supported piece. I don't know what that part means. It just is. And you certainly can't ignore it because it's everywhere. But it's in the eye of the beholder, right? And much of what we do comes with what's the intent. And the intent is to bring heightened focus, but not lessen anyone else's life. And Black Lives Matter could have been used 50, 60 years ago, right? I mean, clearly that some things have changed, but clearly what it says is that not enough has changed. And Mark is well-meaning. We know that. I love Mark like a brother. We just met today. But it's clear that some people that in his profession have other ideas in front of them and are using that profession as a shield to accomplish some really, really evil things. The hope around Black Lives Matter is to heighten that Black lives do matter, and how do we bring more focus of rooting out those that are using that shield for something else. And that's a tough job because, oftentimes officers are put in a position where they may see something wrong, but the culture, depending on what force you're on or where you're at, may say, you don't say nothing. And you go along with it. And then you have to go home and live with your conscience. And that conscience is what eats you from the inside out. So your original question around Black Lives Matter, absolutely. When I hear it, I embrace it. But it's to bring heightened focus that if Mark pulls me over, I want to believe that Mark, in his mind, says, yeah, I have to pull him over, but here's a man who happens to be black, and I need to treat him just the same as if he pulled one of you over. And that's the piece that we have to get across, and that's why you hear it continuously, until such time that the pattern dictates that you're not seeing it every day.
That's awesome.
And so, that's
Yeah. I really appreciate both of your answers. You guys doing good so far in the crowd? Everyone's, we're getting flooded with questions. Can I ask you guys maybe one or two more questions, then we'll take some Q&A. And I will say this, Mark, thank you for helping change the narrative and for stepping up. Mike, thank you for being vulnerable and honest and helping us better understand. I appreciate what both of you have brought to us tonight. Second to last question, how have each of you, and I know, Mark, you alluded to it a little bit, so did you, Mike, how have each of you handled discrimination against you guys? Mark being called things, and Mike saying, even walking to Mukilteo, did you say you had some, was it?
It's subtle.
Sure.
But at the same time, I recognize it, and I always say, what do I do next? Or I say, where am I going to spend my energy? And subtle means sometimes you call it out. And sometimes calling out is basically saying, I'm not understanding your approach. I'm not calling anybody anyone. I'm saying that's a different approach. And the object is to get people to step back and think, could I have done that differently? Now, if it's blatant, then you got to call people on it. But, it's just one of those things. And just, it is what it is. So.
Mark, how about you?
Yeah, I've alluded to it earlier. That it's the majority of the comments that are made are directed to the uniform or the badge. But I guess what's frustrating from my side of it is it seems like nobody wants to come and have a conversation about how things can change. Within the University of Washington, there's a couple of student union groups that have presented their demands, not requests, not whatever another word for that would be, but their demands. They have 7 demands that they require the president to focus on, and that's one of them was disarming the UW-PD. But no one's come to us to have a conversation. No one's come and wanted to do a ride-along to see, that we're out on the streets talking to the homeless, trying to get them in shelter, trying to get them food for the night. And that's probably the most frustrating part from my side is it just seems like nobody wants to come and have those difficult conversations because it would be a difficult conversation. People just look at numbers and a budget and, Seattle PD, like their budget is X amount of dollars and that's way too high. Like we can spend that money elsewhere. And but in reality, it takes away from training that officers could have. Yeah. We only get a certain amount of hours that we're required to have where, that money could be spent on more and maybe better training on how to deal with people in crisis or homeless or, things like that. So like I said, that's probably the frustrating thing is like nobody wants to come and have those difficult conversations. They just come and present their demands without coming with facts or numbers to back up their demands. So,
just take 30 seconds here. I will say, the Mukilteo BD has been nothing but professional. I have not had to engage them, but I know most of the officers in Mukilteo. It's a diverse police force, beyond gracious. I mean, they work with our schools, and so, it's been nothing but, a pleasure there. But I don't care what society you go to, you're going to have something or someone, and you just deal with it. You may not want to, but I happen to be Black and African American. It comes with the territory, whether I like it or not. And so whether I live in Bothell, Mukilteo, Seattle, LA, Springfield, Illinois, or whatever. So, it's just kind of the reality of life. So.
We'll ask you guys each one last question, then we'll answer some of these Q&As. And Vinny and Ban, if you guys want to start kind of slowly making your way up, that's cool. You have a pretty packed house, a lot of people listening. I think, Mark, you said it, wishing there would be more conversation. What are your final words to this group watching, to the people that are going to watch this later? What would you leave people with today? What would you say to them? Sorry, no, it's a loaded one, but what would you leave them with for the both of you?
If you got something, sure. Just don't steal my answer.
First of all, thanks. This is great. I do more of these and make myself available. As you know, I rarely say no when it comes to students. I just don't. But I guess what I would say is, today it's what, about 7:30, 7:45 on October the 7th. And I guess what I would say is, having heard Mark and I share our stories and our perspectives, what are you going to do different 24 hours from now? And we don't know the answer. We don't know the answer, and we don't need to know your answer, but have we shared enough perspective and thought-provoking things that you will show up wherever you are tomorrow and do something different, and how you engage and have those discussions and be vulnerable and actually reach out and maybe generate some discussion. And so that's the thing. What will you do differently? So,
Awesome.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to get comfortable, right? You got your group of friends, you got your youth group, you got maybe your Zoom buddies at your school, I don't know. But it's pretty easy to get comfortable and set in your ways and how you think. But don't be afraid to step outside of those, to seek people that aren't like you, seek different perspectives. Like Mike said, what's it going to be like in 24 hours? How is your perspective going to change, or how is your thinking going to change? It's not going to change if you stay inside your little circle. I think as a kid growing up in Linden, I graduated with 100 people in my class. Working in the U District in Seattle now, it's been a big eye-opening experience for me. But nothing's changed with how I deal with people. I'm still go out and show grace and compassion. If I need to enforce the law gets enforced. If there's other options I can take with a certain person or a certain group, whatever it is, I look for those. For me, especially in King County, there's a lot of good resources and options other than in jail. So, like I said, if you can seek to get outside of your comfort zone, nothing's going to hurt. You're only going to grow from that. So,
That's really good. We'll just take one or two questions. We're getting a lot. So, hey, what we're going to try to do is throughout this week, we'll keep the dialogue going. We'll try to answer your question if you texted it in, and hopefully maybe bring these guys back at some point if you guys are okay with that. Okay, I think they're okay with that. So, how do you guys feel about the rioting and the protesting? Where do you guys stand with that?
protesting is legal. Sharing your thought, perspective, and marching, all that's legal. When it comes to rioting, it's kind of like drugs in school. Zero tolerance is where I would stand on that, period. I can't think of any reason why someone would throw something through a glass. To me, that's a simple answer. There's just, I was in LA during the LA riots, the Rodney King situation. But I just don't personally ascribe to that. I don't know anybody that does, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah. Mark?
Yeah, I'm along the same lines. I'm all for the peaceful demonstrations, the marches through the streets. But once it crosses the line of breaking things, hurting people, like I said, then you've crossed the line, and that's where it needs to stop. And that's kind of how the law enforcement side of it works. You're allowed to be out in the streets, march, chant, yell, whatever it is, but once you cross that line, then it's unlawful at that point. And the peaceful ones that were there just kind of get wrapped up into these, like we talked about before, Mike, it's a handful that start causing the problems, and it ruins it for the rest of the group that are there peacefully.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Your voice is instantly hijacked when there's violence and rioting, and you get caught up in it, the few people that are there. Last question for you guys, to the both of you. Do you like your jobs right now? And what's your favorite part about your job?
No, I don't like my job. I actually love my job.
Oh,
You know, and being a human resources person in Seattle Public Schools, I mean, I enjoy it because you're always looking for top talent to be in the classroom. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that because you're really trying to positively impact the future by being in front of the students. Of course, unfortunately now everyone's online. So, I mean, that is the best part of my job. And then, of course, I have my team. My team being we're all on the same team, but I've got 15 people who are all running in the same direction. And how do I help them get better and take on greater responsibilities, promotion, so forth and so on. And then, of course, the school board job. Been doing it for 10, 11 years. So if I didn't like that, I'd opt out pretty quick. So.
well, we did get a couple texts from our Mukilteo School District kids just saying thank you. So shout out you. How about you, Mark? You like your job? What's your favorite part about it?
I do like my job. Among all the turmoil and issues going on right now, I do like the job. No one day is the same. You might see the same people on the streets, but they may be acting differently today. So every day is different, which is great. I got put on by my choice, and I didn't get put on. I chose to ride a bike for my 40 hours a week. So I've had, outside of the few things that I shared about being yelled at, I've had a lot more positive interactions from the community, which is refreshing. People thanking us for what we do and being out there. So whenever you can get comments like that, it's probably the most rewarding thing.
Do you find yourself, because you're on a bike, having much more of this just face-to-face conversation, just with everyone in the community that you're?
Yeah, I definitely feel more approachable. I think being in a car, people kind of see it as maybe a barrier. But being on a bike, people can walk up, you can roll up on people pretty stealthily. even with all this, it's pretty stealthy. Not to scare them.
Is it a dope bike? Does it have pegs, gyro bar?
It doesn't.
Okay.
They made me take the streamers off. So
The baseball card.
Yeah. But no, it's been rewarding. Cool. Just the positive interactions we've had. So.
Hey, if tonight impacted you, can we just give them both a huge round of applause? Thank you so much, honestly.
First of all, thank you, but I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Mark for being here because he's got a tough job. And, I respect what he does. And so I'll just say publicly, thanks. And no doubt he and I will talk again at some point, but it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tony.
Yeah.
Venture Youth for letting us come up here. This really isn't my thing to talk in front of people, so
you did
especially,
great.
Such a heavy issue, it's a heavy topic right now too, but like I said, having these conversations is a way to grow, it's a way to learn, it's a way to heal.
That's how we do this.
So,
it's great.
Yeah, if it happens again, I'm looking forward to it. So, thank you, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. Hey, why don't you guys go ahead, stand your